Hello my crafty friends, it's Sharon Luska here from My Crafty Greetings. Now I have this funky pattern paper pad with all those big crazy papers in it. It's an old video that I didn't get voiceovered for Craft Roulette, but it's A7 with island elements, hippie colors, and random item was wood, and this paper pad filled the need that I had for this, and it has some very kind of masculine looking papers, definitely some islandy looking foliage and things like that, which I thought was fabulous. This was a great piece here because it had the wood, but you know, I thought we could take a deep dive into this and take a look at how to use some of these papers, how to use especially these big weird ones, because don't we always just leave them in the pile? Like that one too. So this won't include all of the papers, but we're going to start off with a couple of them, and then the next video will follow up with a bunch more of the weirdness and what you can do with them, and applicable to many things, but also these will give us some great kind of masculine looking cards and you know, some universality. So yeah, what would we make a card out of with this, huh? That's the whole point, right? Okay, so 5x7 cards, a much better choice for man cards especially. And let's stop being cheap with inches of our supplies that we're just stashing away anyways. Let's use them up on a good size card. And this is the best way to do it. I have a slide ruler cutter here, and I put a couple stickers on the back behind the two numbers that are most important to me, and that is the 5-inch mark and the 7-inch mark. And of course, on a 12x12 paper, 5 plus 7 is 12. Got my paper nicely lined up against the 5 mark here, and I've got my blade out of the way, and I'm just looking at the 5 mark and the 7 mark. But what you have to decide is, are you cutting up from the bottom or are you cutting down from the top? Because you're going to get different cuts depending on where you cut. So if we start from the top, we're going to get this picture. If we start from the bottom, we're going to get this picture. So this is the one that I want. We're going to start from the bottom and go all the way up to the 5 mark, which means that we've now made a 7-inch cut in our 12x12 paper. So you may have the instinct to turn it this way, but don't. What you need to do is turn it around so that the 5-inch guide is lined up opposite your cut mark. So you want to make sure your slice is sticking away from your 5-inch guide, and then that way you won't make a mistake cutting it. Also, if you start cutting from the bottom, continue cutting from the bottom. If you start cutting from the top, continue cutting from the top. And whether you go to the 5-inch mark or the 7-inch mark, you're still going to achieve the same cut. Now, finishing these off, you can use your guillotine cutter, which will save your blade. And what you're going to do is feed the 7-inch side in up to the 5-inch mark and slice. And then just keep rotating and repeating the cuts until you have all your pieces cut. I need to clean up my edges on this one. Now, I don't like the fact that this is so faded out, so we're going to use some Copic coloring to fix this up. And I have to tell you, pick colors that are close. They don't have to be exact. You don't have to use Copics. But if you go in there and you fortify colors and shadows, it can make all the difference in the depth on a piece of printed paper. So I'm just going in here really, really quickly. Yes, this is not specifically paper that's meant for Copic coloring, but anywhere that I want the shadows darkened up, anywhere where I want the grain of the wood to be a little bit darker, I'm going to add some in. And then I'm also going to brighten up these flowers as well. Now, one of my markers was dried out. Doesn't really matter. Just pick the next color that you've got available, and it'll all turn out beautifully. Just remember too that these all dry back. Whatever colors you pick, they may seem intense when you're coloring them over, or as they call glazing, but once they dry back, they're just going to be perfect. And you'll see the difference when I compare it with the page that's still left in my paper pad versus what I've just finished here. I've also gone over the greens, and I've picked a couple different greens, one that's more of a minty green and one that's more of a sagey green. I've gone through this so quick. And I'm going to take this time too to ask that you give me a thumbs up and leave me a comment, even if it's just a smiley face. It helps me so much. I'm really working hard to build my channel so that I can do some more cool stuff on here for you guys. And then I also have my affiliate links down below, regardless of whether you're using the links to buy a product that I've used in my video, or whether you're just using the links to make sure that suppliers know that I'm out here and that I'm worth supporting, that would be fantastic. So we're coming around the corner to finishing this up. And here's a little look at what color glazing can do if you're going to color over printed images. I think it looks so much more dramatic and stunning. Now I want to take a flip through and see what I might pair this with from the paper pad. There's a few strips here that kind of hit my fancy. Just taking some time to audition these and see what they might look like is going to be a really, really big help. Now, one of the things too that I'll go over in my next video is how to partition off these big, huge sheets and see what your 5x7 base might look like. Because if you start with a 5x7 base, you're going to be able to do a lot more with these big crazy pages than if you're just trying to cut out pieces to use. More of that in part 2 of this video. Now I've picked some ecru paper here, which is kind of off-white, and I decided this would be better as 2 cards, so I've already split them up. You can see I'm trying things out, and I really, really like this border strip here, but I don't need all of it, so I'm just gonna cut a bit of it in half. These are the things that I like to be cheap with. Yes, I make 5x7 cards. Sure, it makes a couple more inches of paper used up, but really, you know, when you're gonna be cheap with something, be cheap over the good stuff, not over the cheap stuff. So here I am, I'm gonna put these together, and I'm just trying to figure out which one floats my fancy, and I know that I wanna really put a border or an edge along here, something that defines the sides of this piece. And I'm going to use a little bit of gold paper strip, but how much? How much reveal should I have when I'm putting this together? Well, if you look at these, the thickness of these gold lines on my detail piece here, what I want to do is try and approximately match something from there so that it makes sense to my eye when I look at it. So if you see here, see how that's pretty close? So that gives your eye a little bit of harmony when it looks. It gives your work a little bit more balance. I'm just going to snip these little tabs off, and then we'll go ahead and start putting this card the rest of the way together. Now I want to do some layering techniques to give this card some extra interest. And I'm actually going to do white on white. I know this is ecru, but white on white. And what I'm going to do is give this a lifted up piece that's the same width as that little border that I'm going to add. And then I will add my border over to the other side here. And so when I pop this up, it's actually going to have some extra dimension to it, but dimension that has a softness about it. When you pop up white over white, it definitely gives it a different kind of detail. Now I have this gorgeous thin little die cut. It came from Simon Says Stamp, and unfortunately these are no longer available. If you have them, super happy for you. There is Lisa Horton Crafts Dies Tatty Words that is similar to it. Of course, I love my Sizzix Tim Holtz. That would give you a similar look. And then Paper Tray Ink has the line dies that I think would also work. I think all of this started with Lawn Fawn though. I'll put some links below that you can check out and see if anything suits your fancy. Now, I'm cutting these 2 apart, but there's some little finishing that I'm going to do, and this is where reading glasses are so valuable. If you can't see your stuff really, really well, your lighting's bad, your glasses aren't strong enough, or your eyeballs aren't strong enough, you need to do what you can do to be able to see. I've cleaned up those edges so that they're slightly rounded and they don't look like they've just been nipped off with scissors. And then I'm going to use my little trick here of putting on Tombow Mono Multi to the back of this and allowing it to dry, which makes it a sticker. I've also put Tombow Mono Multi on this piece of packing foam sheet with a brush, and I'm working on making these into stickers, and that should be a technique that I'll be able to share with you guys. So I've got it only on one side so far. I've got to figure out a way of getting this to work so that it actually has some sort of release on the back of it. So I just add a little more Tombow Mono Multi, and then we can stick this in place. This just gives it enough lift so that we can see the shadow from that extra layer, here, and it gives it some good dimension without making it too thick to mail. Now you could also put these sentiments up the side if you like as well, which gives it a cool detail. Now I noticed that this edge, the paper was showing through from the bottom, so I very carefully put some green on. And then I've got my little acetate sticks here, which will help me line these up to where I want them. And once you've got them in place, you just give them a tap down and you can slide those little acetate sticks out. Having two separate ones so that you can move them back and forth makes all the difference in the world. And I think that card is done and looks just gorgeous. What do you think? Lots of dimension and lots of detail, but something subtle and classy and good for male or female. Now my last piece here, I'm just going to attach it directly to my card base. Of course, it's still a 5x7 card base, and we're still hitting the parameters of wood, island, and hippie colors. I always think of that old dusty colors as being hippie colors. But I'm going to take this piece of gold here, and we're going to add a little bit of mimicry along the edge. Now, I like cards that have that band along the edge, and there's a pretty standard size of 1/8 of an inch on the side of the card lip that lets you have that type of reveal. So there's about 1/8 of an inch right there. You can do whatever size you want. It would be a little bit difficult to have the very lip of the card match the thickness of your scripty sentiment, but I think it's great to have the gold repeated because it just pulls everything together. I've gone ahead and added tape runner to one side of my panel here, and I'm adding my packing foam sticky tape to the other, and then adding a little bit of tape runner just to that lip of it so it doesn't pull off. And this is going to give a ramped, lifted panel. So it's going to be up on one side and then flat with the gold on the other side. Again, giving it another type of funky and different dimension. And this is also going to take this scripty sentiment and allow it to kind of sweep up and then sweep down with the opposite side of the card. Another just fun little detail. That also means that you don't have to add the gold in because it's right up against, if it was flat against the colored panel, you might want to put the gold in, but because you've got some dimension there, it looks great. And I think it's cool when the white panel is right up against your gold. That just finishes that card very clean, very simple, but still really nice, and definitely a masculine card that you could use. So just one 5x7 panel, already 2 cards, but you can see how it's easier to take a 5x7 panel out of a 12x12 and cut it down to make something else. So I didn't include the how-to of this card, but I just wanted to show you, as unlikely a panel as this would be for you to use, I added a few extra sheets of paper over top of the printed sheets of paper, and then stamp them up with happy birthday, a sentiment, and a little bit of a background stamp there. It's the magnolias from My Favorite Things. I really like that stamp. It's an older stamp, but I just started using it. And then I have a few little details here. I pulled some of the strings out of that funky woven ribbon just to add some more detail to it, and a few die cuts from the tropical dies from Scrappy Tales, and then that bee wax seal just to put it all together. Just a different way of making one more card, and we'll go back at that pad and do some more. I have some more videos that you might be interested in that are paper pad hacks. Thanks so much for joining me. Look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks. Bye.